got a 70 Spitfire in the shop today. It's a fairly new purchase for the guy who owns it, and we're going to take a good look at it. Let's go. So my understanding is the guy who owns this thing bought this thing a little bit earlier this year from a guy in California who had restored it, and he's been thoroughly enjoying driving it and didn't want to stop driving it to have it looked at until the season ended, which is why we have it in now. But part of the reason why he's enjoying it so much is it's not exactly a stock Spitfire. And of course the bonnet bulge here and the extra louvers kind of hint around to that. And the party piece for this one is it's got the heart of a GT6 in it. My understanding, from what he said, the previous owner said the whole chassis is GT6. I personally don't know the Spitfires and GT6s well enough to know if there is even a difference between a chassis or what to look for if there is a difference, but I do know that this is a 6-cylinder version of the same 4-cylinder that was in the Spitfire. Basically, it's the 1.3 with 2 extra cylinders, making it just shy of 2 liters. They call it a 2-liter. So this thing has the Stromberg triple carb conversion on it. Now, it doesn't need that hood bulge, or bonnet bulge, sorry, to clear this carburetor. It needed it for the previous carburetor setup that the previous owner had on it originally when he first put it together. But it also has a lot of other goodies on it, like the anthracite wheels here, and it has Spax adjustable shocks all the way around as well. This engine is not stock. From the paperwork, he's got a whole big load of paperwork of all the receipts and everything that was bought for it when the guy who restored it done it. And it shows that it has a Kent 264 cam in it, and the compression ratio was calculated out about 10.25 to 1. So it does get this little Spitfire down the road pretty nicely. So the owner brought me a list of little things he wants done to it. Nothing on here is major issues. It's all just kind of small stuff, where many of these items are things that most people wouldn't get terribly excited about on an average car, but on one that's done this nicely, it starts becoming a bit annoying that a car this nice has some of those little issues. And a lot of that stuff is basically all of the stuff that oftentimes fails to get done after a restoration, because a car is never done when it's restored. It needs a period of time afterwards to sort through all the issues and just get it all sorted out. And I think some of those issues just never got sorted out. The guy went on to restoring another car, took it to shows, and never went back and finished all the sorting. So that's basically what we're going to be doing, is sorting all those little things out and making some minor adjustments here and there and checking a few things that has gone wrong with it since he's been driving. Now, none of that's going to happen in this video. It'll be in another video, or possibly 2, depending how long it takes. But some of the issues he's got is turn signals were working fine, and then they stopped. Horn was working fine, and now it stopped. And I guess the alternator crapped out on it, from what he's telling me. So I got to check voltage on that and see what it looks like. It's running a little bit too rich, idle's a little too high, and the main thing that's bugging the crap out of him, the steering. How much slop is in the steering wheel. Now, I know we had one in earlier in the year that had the same problem, but this is a different cause to the problem than the last one had. In this particular case, it's got a replacement rack in it, and the damper here, this is all loose, see? This thing's just been backing out and flopping around, and that's causes it to go out of adjustment and is causing all the slop in the steering. So we're gonna have to adjust that properly to take the slop out. And we're gonna do basic service on it. He said when he got it, there was no oil in the carbs, so potentially needs the O-rings put in there. Either that or the previous owner just didn't know it needed oil. But it's been 10 years since it was restored. 10 years is plenty of time for those O-rings to go bad and need replaced again. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, the interior is actually really well done. Most of this car is really well done, except for a couple minor details here and there. You know, he's got the GT6 gauges in it, and so it's got turn signals there, but also has a turn signal here. So he's not happy with having two sets and only one working. So we're going to play with that and try to come up with a nice solution. The map light wasn't working. Then when he brought it in here, it was working but wouldn't shut off. So we got to look at that. E-brake doesn't hold really well. To me, the shifter feels a little loose, but he wasn't complaining about that. But the biggest thing he's complaining about, as far as fitment and stuff, is this. The windows were never adjusted properly, and they don't fit to the hardtop. And actually, it's sticking out too far as well. So we got to tear the doors apart, and you can actually see these are moving around a lot too. So we got to play with the door tracks, get all this stuff adjusted right on both sides. This is the worst side. The other side's not nearly as bad. Now the previous owner put an MSD box on it, but he put it right here where the washer bottle would normally be at. Now he wants to install the washer bottle, so we got to figure out a solution to either put the washer bottle somewhere else or put this somewhere else and put the washer bottle back where it's supposed to be. Now, I haven't had this car up in the air yet. Let's put it up in the air and take a look at what it looks like underneath. So the guy who put this thing together really sweated a lot of the details in this thing. Made a lot of little custom brackets, spent a ton of time really bending fuel lines and brake lines, trying to get everything to look really nice, and brackets to hold everything so nothing's loose. But, and so the car is well done all the way around. Customer did say that he felt this thing's a little stiff, so we might soften the shocks up just a hair. Of course, you can't expect it to be too soft to ride. It's, you know, it's a British sports car. None of them ride nice and soft. But we got, you know, just a light weeping of oil here, totally expected. I mean, what British car doesn't have a little bit of oil, you know, like that? He did say he thinks possibly had an exhaust leak, and it looks like right here it does have a little exhaust leak. So we might have to tweak that and see if we can get that to seal up. And it's got the Ansa exhaust on the back, which it looks like it's all sitting and hanging pretty nice. Now these, this is one of the trouble areas on these. You always got to look for cracks in the rubber here. These are still looking pretty good. Where, you know, a few years, you're starting to see a little bit of dry rot just getting started in the very corners here, which is kind of hard to see without a little more light. But it's all in good shape. It really hasn't been driven that much. And that's kind of probably the biggest issue, is because it hasn't been used enough. It might have a few small issues from sitting too much. I don't know what the brakes look like yet, but he has no complaints other than a slightly soft pedal, but it does have silicone brake fluid, which tends to give you a slightly softer pedal than regular .3 and .4 brake fluid will. It's one of the downfalls, I guess, if you will, for the .5. So some of the other things we're going to actually look at is some of the body fitment stuff. He said these latches here are popping a little too easily. And one of them popped open once while they were driving. So we might do some minor adjustments there. And we like how this here, we got a big gap here, it gets bigger here. That's a really simple adjustment to get that to actually line up properly. So we'll probably do that. And we're going to look at the door fitment. The door's not fitting quite as well as he'd like to see it because it's sticking out a little bit on the bottom here. It's a lot closer here than the other side is, and it doesn't line up to the bonnet very well. And the bonnet doesn't actually line up too well with the cowl. So we'll look into that and see if we can make any of that a little bit better. One of the issues with, say, what I call amateur restorations, which I'm not calling the guy that did this an amateur, it's just that he plays with everything. He's, after he got done with this, I think he's working on a Mustang, and he's got a Chevelle, something else. So he's not specifically a British car guy, and he's not used to dealing with the parts that we're dealing with for British cars. So I don't know if he did any metal work on this stuff. But one of the common issues is if a dog leg here gets replaced, oftentimes there's not enough shape in there, and then it's too flat, and then you end up with the bottom corner of the door sticking out because the panel shape is wrong, and you have to adjust it to fit, and then that doesn't get done with people who aren't familiar with these cars. And the other thing is new door seals. Once you put new seals in, a lot of times they don't collapse well, or door panels are a little too thick nowadays because they're done on Luan instead of the old hardboard. And then you can't get these things to actually sit flush and actually latch, so then they never line up as well once you've done final assembly as they did during the bodywork stages when you didn't have all that stuff in place, which I like to put at least the door seals in when I'm doing them to try to get the fitment closer. So overall, this is a really nice car, and it was done, for the most part, really well. Almost street rod in some ways with some of the details, but I'm cool with that, even if the original purists aren't. And it drives, other than the steering, which can be a bit unnerving, really well, and delivers the power really well. And I think the owner's going to really enjoy this thing and have a good time driving it. So look for some videos in the future on sorting out all those little details.